All right, Todd Ryan. Hey, how you doing, man? Welcome to the InnSync show.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
We're going to talk about how hotels can win low-hanging group business. And oftentimes, a lot of these hotels don't even realize this is happening. So I'm sure you already realized that an estimated 50 to 80% of people planning meetings aren't professional meeting planners. They're executive assistants, admins. So Todd, I'm going to jump right in here and I'm going to ask you, why are non-professional planners the biggest untapped opportunity for hotels?
Part of it is because we just don't think about it. Many of us in the industry have been around for a long time. This is exactly how it was when I first started many years ago. And it's like a bell curve because early in my career, most meeting planners were executive assistants of some sort. Companies did not invest in having a professional meeting planner on staff. That changed as time progressed, as we got into the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, and a lot more professional planners. There was the advent of the third party. And even a lot of this, I hadn't even thought about even having this question come up earlier. And as we were coordinating time to connect, the things that I've even fallen victim to it, forgetting about some of these opportunities that exist out there because you become part of that machine, part of that process. And we just assume with all the technology that's out there that there's only one or two ways that we get leads for meeting planners. And I think it's forgotten about the entire segment of people that aren't, especially post-COVID. A lot of workforce was reduced. A lot more people are doing more with less resources and have taken on this responsibility, particularly as you see group business coming back. Professional meeting planners have not been, quote unquote, rehired in many circumstances. And so even with larger companies, you still have the demographic of HR people, assistants, the sales leader, what have you, coordinating those meetings. And you've got the other part of it is the demographics have changed. Most of the professional planners, as I was in my earlier career, came from the hospitality industry. If they're older in age and have hit a certain threshold where they would decide they wanted to retire, they're no longer in the business. And so you're replacing some of them with younger people who have new ways of doing things and aren't familiar with all the tools that are out there. Maybe they're not a part of an association that teaches them that and hasn't been something on the radar. And so they're not even aware. They don't know what they don't know.
Good point. I would also wager to bet that oftentimes these younger generations don't necessarily want to talk to sales. Is that possible?
Quite possibly. It's very quite possible. I think that when you look at the studies, even Google going back, and I had this conversation with someone earlier today with the old ZMOT, zero moment of truth. I think back then it was people were 60% of the way through the process before ever talking to a salesperson. And now it's more likely 85%.
Bingo.
People are doing research.
Yep.
And I often feel that if we actually spent more time having better conversations, people would be willing to talk. There are a lot of questions that people still have. They need help, but it has to be a meaningful conversation and not a conversation around something they can find on the internet themselves. And so if we're not prepared to have a conversation and meet them where they're at, very likely they don't want to have that conversation. And one of the anecdotes I used to tell people why RFPs came into existence back in the day, meeting planners used to have to call hotels. They would call 10 hotels and they would be asked the same 10 questions because the salespeople were trained by the same people. And so they decided, I'm just going to pre-answer these questions and fax it through or email it or now submit it through an RFP so that I don't have to keep answering the same questions over and over again. And those are all things that they can pretty much find online somewhere. And if those are still the same questions that are being asked of customers, then no, they don't want to talk to people. They don't want to be sold. They want to have a conversation. They want to learn. I had to go through a buying process here recently outside of the industry. I submitted information very quickly. My phone blew up within 30 seconds and they were asking the same questions that I just submitted. And it was like, you don't want to deal with the annoying salesperson. I want help. I need help. And that's where we have to actually put our frame of thought is how can we be a service and actually be helpful and not trying to close a sale.
Have you used generative AI to do some of your pre-DIY sales process? In fact, I use this example a lot. We're switching CRMs ourselves. I was able to create a prompt using my requirements, all the questions that I had it gave me the most incredible summary, boiled it down to 3 solutions. It immediately discounted all the other ones that I didn't even have to think about. I went 75% of the sales process myself, which was a breeze. It took me 20 minutes. And I did most of that myself. And that's one of the things that I see the younger generations. And at 57, if I'm doing this, I can imagine, and I love to talk. I'm a talker, but you take the new AI generative 0-click search environment, a generation that doesn't necessarily want to pick up the phone, and they are impatient. They want answers. And if you push them through an archaic hotel sales process, God forbid they go look at a Marriott meetings and events website, it is absolutely horrific. And they're pushing, again, what could be 50 to 80% of these potential guests away. Hotels don't even realize it. And we see it because our hotels are attracting that type of business. So how can hotels optimize the website? I obviously tipped my hand there a little bit to attract and convert more of these types of planners anyways.
I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. It is user experience versus the marketing that goes behind it. When you're an individual hotel, marketing dollars are a scarce resource oftentimes. Really depends on the organization you work with, the ownership and how they feel about things. And then you're looking at something that's going to have more of a quick hit. I was thinking about it earlier too, when you look at even Google's attribution and how far back do you look? And if you're looking at a meeting RFP and this is an event that's going to happen a year from now, how do you attribute anything to that and connect those dots? And so investing in the marketing that goes along with that to be in front of search, it can be a challenge, but that's where SEO and you were talking about AI. One of the things that I've been seeing, and now this comes from more of a marketing side of things versus putting yourself in the customer shoes, is that those questions are being answered for you without ever having to click on the website through the responses through Google, zero click.
Yep.
So as I'm typing in my question, which I remember when we were talking about short tail, long tail, and how we had to be conversational on websites because of the way people were Googling what is X. And now it's a whole conversation in a search string that AI is starting to pick up. And people aren't even clicking anymore into the website because the answer is right there for you in that little description. And so that then plays into that user experience and how you can build out your website. And this is, again, I don't think I was even thinking about this until we started engaging in this, but having some of those FAQ type situations on the website, making recommendations, instead of saying submit an RFP, something like tell us about your event. We talk about flexible meeting spaces. What does that mean? Does that novice meeting planner know what an air wall is? And that meeting room can be configured. I think when you were talking earlier, before we started recording, one of the things that I thought was even interesting is, do you get to know that salesperson? Is there a video on there that says, hi, help me walk you through this process? It doesn't have to be written. This is the information perhaps that we would need to be able to help you, or some things to consider. I think we've gone back and forth in the hospitality industry about empty rooms that are set, people in rooms or not. And it's probably where some social media can actually come into play. I remember this is now probably 15 or so years ago when contracts were 20 pages, even for a small 10-person meeting. Are we making it easy and do we really have to hold people accountable for the last dollar? You've got 10 people at $100 a person. It's $1,000. If you don't spend $995, we're going to charge you the extra $5. That's what that clause means. Do we really need to? And in some cases, for large events, absolutely. You're giving away your entire ballroom for a lot of people, but for some of these smaller meetings, and making sure that we walk people through that. I think in a lot of industries, I see sales and marketing fail to put themselves in the customer's shoes, and we need to do more of that. Not only in this industry, even as I try to buy things. I get frustrated when I can't find stuff online or information. You said earlier, we're of a much entirely different demographic than some younger people. And I watch my kids scroll through stuff, and if they can't find answers, their attention span is next. And what opportunities are you missing? You'll never be able to measure that. And that's what's so hard about it, is because you can't measure it. How do you put a dollar amount against that? But it happens. How many people are just, walking away because they can't find what they're looking for?
Funny thing you said that, because this is a great segue. What's shocking to me is that most and I'm talking from an independent property perspective because I can pull website numbers. Most hotel websites have a significant amount of traffic already going through the door of the lobby, right? Half of the battle is getting your audience through your front door. And the 4 things I'm going to recommend cost little to no money to implement. You're not doing what needs to be done to captivate, educate, inspire, and build trust with those people that are already there. First one you already hit on is FAQs. There should be top, middle, bottom, and a separate section for non-professional planners on what is attrition and those basic terms of what planning is all about. So generative AI is going to source that in when somebody prompts it. But B, you give everybody what they need to comfortably answer the questions so that they're not wasting your time, and including, by the way, we talk about pricing. Put a from or ballpark, or don't be afraid to at least bring up that subject. FAQs, pricing. Where is the social proof? We're obsessed with testimonials on TripAdvisor, right? There's little to no social proof. Video testimonials of a group that's had a great event there. You don't have to sit them down for a 2-minute spiel. Get some highlights, get some actions, get those things that you can shoot with a smartphone. We call it a sizzle reel. A couple cuts, make a small video, put that on the website. Have a team page. Who are they going to work with? Who's your sales team? Who's your convention services? Who's your chef? Is your executive chef dynamic? Is he a character? Can he tell stories? Does he have some really cool craftsmanship when it comes to food and beverage? Obviously, that's a huge incentive for groups. And then, my gosh, why don't you have a short form on your website? First name, last name, email address, and question. How can we help? An open-ended short form. That's it. They give the ability to reach out, ask a basic question. Most of them have to go through some crazy RFP form that's 20 fields, as we mentioned, or no one's going to do that. I don't do it. Somebody that's 25, 30, executive assistant that's been tasked with the meeting, they're not going to do it. So those would be how
many of those answers do they already have? If they don't know what information that they need because they're not professional, then they're getting halfway through the RFP process going, I don't know the answers to this. I don't know what I'm looking for yet. I don't know. I need someone to help me with that. And then there goes your abandonment issue.
Totally. So from an unbiased, as an industry as a whole segment, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see hotels are missing out on to capture this audience?
In general, because we were bombarded with so many RFPs from professional planners, and that's what we're accustomed to. Post-COVID, staffing did fall in a lot of hotels, and we probably still haven't gotten to pre-pandemic levels from a sales and catering perspective in a lot, but depending on the market you're in, it became transactional in the sense, and I saw this even well before the pandemic, where we're not coming at it from a place of trying to help people. And I go back, I'll use the example of when I first started selling, well before a lot of RFPs and professional planners, we were taught, a lot of our role was to help guide somebody through because they did not know. We were the experts. They were not. And that's where pre-internet days, even if you look at the evolution of selling over the past century, salespeople were really important in the sense that they were the ones with the information. They owned all the information. Mm-hmm. They controlled it. There was a lot of trust issues because they controlled the information. Yep. And then the internet came about and there's information everywhere. And so customers were a lot more armed with that. We got away from that mentality of, let me help you through the process. And even as it related to sales contracts, when I was early in my leadership career, part of what I was also teaching my salespeople to do was, when you get to the contract stage, let's not just send it out and say, hey, here you go. Let's try to schedule a time to make sure we can walk somebody through it so that they understand what all this stuff is and have that conversation there. Then that disappeared because everybody became professional meeting planners. They knew what contracts were, and it became a little bit more transactional. But I think that, especially with these meeting planners that aren't professionals, when you look at some of the sporting events, my wife was starting to do meeting planning for my daughter's cheer teams because she has a hotel background. And the person that she took it from was amazed at how well she did and what she was able to get and negotiate because she knew what questions to ask. But this is exactly what we're talking about, is that other person was not a professional planner. So they didn't even know. And they had no one to walk them through the process. And they were getting frustrated because they couldn't get a hold of anybody. And so I think part of that is going back to that spirit of hospitality, spirit of being of service to people, and recognizing, having conversations, whether it's an email or you're texting, whatever your communication method is, even going back and asking, what's your familiarity with planning a meeting like this? Have you done this before? What are some of the questions that you have before we even start a conversation? So that I'm not just asking you the same basic questions. What do you know about us? What do you know about this process? What questions are top of mind as you were typing in information so that I can make sure that we're having a conversation about it and try to be a little bit more of service to people. Otherwise, the minute that we start to sell, people's guard come up. I don't want to be sold to, and they're going to be a little bit more defensive, taken aback, cautious with what they're saying. But if you have more of a conversation or presenting yourself as a guide and trying to be helpful and not make a sale, you're going to get a lot more information and you're going to create trust. You're going to be able to build a little bit more of a relationship. And that alone could put you well ahead of everybody else because you're there trying to help them. I remember, I've told a lot of customers in my past when I was a salesperson and a sales leader on property, I don't know that we're the right fit for you. Let me refer you over here because I don't think that we're going to be able to accommodate what you're going to be able to do. And oftentimes they would look at me like, what? Like, yeah, I can make this fit in this meeting room. You're not going to be comfortable. It's not going to go the way that you want it to go. I'd rather have an opportunity to work with you again down the road than put you in here and have you upset with me for the next 2 years and be that story that you tell everybody.
Exactly. In fact, this is a great segue into, I'm just going to ask you about, this is totally relevant. I don't know of anybody in hospitality that doesn't say it's about relationships, right? Everybody, it's like a canned term, right? But the disconnect, I see such a transactional mindset in some, like you just said, it's like we have a piece of business it's in front of us right now. But the short-term mindset, and I gasped because a lot of people in hotel sellers would do everything that they could to not pass up that past business, not realizing the positive unintended consequences that could come back to them fivefold because you were straight and honest with me, rather than you booked that group and suddenly you're like, oh, wow, I closed that, got this one sale. Here comes that group, but then you're grinning and bearing it because it's going to be a shit show, right? It's going to go sideways. And unfortunately, the experience wasn't great. They told all the people how they felt taken advantage of. There are no referrals. I'm not saying everybody in this industry, but for whatever reason, I see a disconnect there between that transactional short-sightedness and then the long view of building trust, where you are the person in San Diego. In fact, Mandy is that person I was here at HPN. She's that type of seller, and she has a reputation of utmost trust. So I see that's one of the biggest mistakes in this industry. Is there something you could add?
I think people throw around the relationship term a little too loosely, like you said. You can have relationships are extremely important or valuable, but it's not the be all end all in the sense that just because you and I have a great relationship, it doesn't mean that we're going to do business together. And I think that's where sometimes salespeople have that disconnect is, I have a great relationship with this person. Yeah, when it comes time, when stuff hits the fan, are they going to be on your side? Can they do the referrals? How are they speaking about you? And there is that give and take that we might be great acquaintances, we might be great friends, might go have beers, but are we ever going to really be able to work together? And so I think that's part of the challenge in our industry is that people misconstrue sometimes that relationship dynamic and what that really means. That being said, sales is about trust. It's about credibility, having a good working relationship, a professional relationship. That's actually probably the better way I should be saying.
Yeah, I was going to say a relationship doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like somebody, but you have to trust somebody.
Yes. Knowing that my word is gold or your word is gold, and that's going to come from developing that trust. And that goes back to, I think, what we said earlier is not being quote unquote salesy and where is your motivation to really try to help somebody have success. I can remember, even as a salesperson, at the end when a conference ended and the meeting planner would come and give you a big hug and, wow, this was awesome. It was great. Thank you so much for your help, your staff. And I would watch the bond between a convention services person and that meeting planner. There was something special. You guys, they went through something together and built that trust. And that starts from the very beginning of the process. And I still today, they tell sellers, it's that first interaction. It could be how you leave a voicemail, how you send an email, the questions that you're asking, or what does that follow-up look like? Are you a trusted advisor? Or are you just saying, hey, Cory, do you have an update for me? Or is it hey, I know we're still in this process. You were talking about wellness at one point during our conversation. Have you seen this article? It's nothing to do with me trying to sell you. It's me just giving you some more insight, some help with something. Because I paid attention and I was listening. It wasn't just about getting your signature on a contract and getting your money at the end of the day. It was just legit. It used to be, I'm not going to hear from the salesperson again until it's time to book this meeting. Where is that? Hey, how's the process working? Are we taking care of you the way that you imagined? Can I be of any assistance in the process? Anybody else in the organization that you'd like me to make sure that I'm connected to? So in case something were to happen, whatever it is, the salesperson looked at, they were on to the next RFP and then, oh, you're here for the meeting? Great. Hey, how are you? And what does that say to a meeting planner in that time period that's gone? And those are professional planners. What about these ones that really don't know what to expect and are being treated the same way? And if everybody's treating these planners the same way, it only takes 3 or 4 to really stand out.
Really good point. Awesome. Before we break here, Todd, what have you been up to lately and where can people find you?
One of my passions, I've several years ago, I got into leadership coaching. As much as I love sales and marketing, there's so many things that are related to leadership and coaching. I've been doing a lot of research in psychology, behavioral science. And the more I dive into it, we talk about influence and persuasion in sales. There's people heard everybody sells, and you're trying to influence somebody. A teacher's trying to influence their students to do homework. A doctor's trying to influence somebody to eat a healthier lifestyle. Leaders are trying to influence people getting things done and following that mission. And I find that there's so many crossovers in between leadership and marketing and sales. That's where I really enjoy it. I spend a lot of my free time doing that. And you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yes, we can. In fact, I loved it, by the way, your post today, and the difference between persuasion and intimidation. I think that
coercion. Yeah.
Yeah. Coercion. Yes.
I've had several people ask me, I just started posting on a regular basis, probably about 1.5 years ago. And one of the things that I found is a few things. It's therapeutic in many ways. It's my kind of way of journaling. I had several people that I used to work with that were on my teams that you lose track of, that have reached out and said, although I don't comment or what have you, I see them and they still resonate with me because I can hear your voice, and they've actually helped me get through a couple of different challenges. Right. And the other part of it is when you're putting it out there, there's this thing called cognitive dissonance. If you're not doing it yourself, it's very uncomfortable. So it also holds me accountable, and it reminds me, these are the things that I need to do to be a better leader, a better salesperson, a better marketer. As I do the research on some of those things, oh, wow, I've forgotten all about that. So if I write something about it, it's reinforcing my training and my learning. And so when conversations like this happen, it's a lot more natural. You're not flubbing around. It's because it's something that you truly believe in and have a passion for. And so it's fun for me.
Wow, that's great. Awesome. Hey, man, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you'll join me again on maybe we'll have round 2 of this. Appreciate your.
We'd love to. It's even got me thinking about some of the things that I need to make sure our teams are working on, and things to look forward to in the process, whether it's an independent group leads or whatever. Is where can we reduce the friction in the process?
Love it, man. Thanks again for the combo, and have a great night.
You as well. Thanks,
Thanks, man.